Joining us now, Congressman Jim Jordan from the great state of Ohio on TextGate, the memo that still hasn't been released, and now the new questions about the Mueller investigation with the texts that have been released, and he joins us now. Congressman, it is quite a switch for the Democrats to be standing up and cheering for law enforcement after what we've seen from them in recent years.
Yeah, what's not good for the country is when you have top people at the FBI putting their finger on the scale, when you have a breakdown in the fundamental rule of law and equal treatment under that law. And that is what everything points to that took place. We know now, based on these text messages, Laura, that the fix was in at the start of the Clinton investigation. And they went through the motions. They decided ahead of time. They wrote the memo exonerating Clinton ahead of time before they'd even interviewed her and before they'd interviewed 17 other witnesses. So we know that took place. And the central figure in that whole investigation was Peter Strzok. And then, lo and behold, the same people who did that are the key people in the Russian investigation. So that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of here. And the fundamental issue is it going to be equal treatment under the law, and are we going to respect the rule of law?
Well, you know, Bob Mueller had this great reputation going in, and now certain Republicans, and most all Democrats, they view that any attack on the FBI is an attack just to carry Trump's water. And that was said time and again on MSNBC this morning. That's the new line. And what's your response to that?
No, look, the vast majority of people in the FBI are out there busting their tail, working hard to keep the country as safe as they possibly can, and they're doing their job. We're talking about a handful of people at the very top. We're talking about Andrew McCabe, the guy who got $700,000 for his wife's campaign. Andrew McCabe met with Terry McAuliffe when his wife is running for state senate in Virginia, and Terry McAuliffe was under investigation when he took that meeting. We're talking about Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, who were part of that core group at the top who ran the Clinton investigation and then were involved in the Russian investigation. Those are the people we're talking about, not the agent out there busting his tail, doing his job like he's supposed to. We have the utmost respect for them. But when you look at the animus, not bias, everyone talks about the bias Strzok and Page demonstrated in these text messages. It's animus. They despise Donald Trump, and frankly, they don't like people like you and I. Remember the one text message where one of them's walking in Walmart and they say, "I can smell the Trump supporters in Walmart," right? Mm-hmm. That's the feeling they have for folks like you and I who think about fundamental values and those principles that made our country special. So that's what we're talking about, not the rank and file agents.
Do you think it is appropriate for the President of the United States to call McCabe into his office when he was acting FBI director and ask him if this happened for whom he voted?
You probably shouldn't be asking who people voted for, but I'll tell you what, in this whole darn affair, I think the President, when you start looking at the text messages from these two individuals, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page, you start looking at all that and what the presidents went through, you can understand the frustration he has as the guy who's the target of this special counsel investigation. So I understand the concern the president has, and I think, frankly, so many Americans have a concern. When you think about the IRS targets people, has trouble with Lois Lerner's hard drive, destroys backup tapes that are under subpoena, under preservation order, then you got what happened in the Clinton investigation, and now Shazam! 5 months of text messages suddenly missing, and they're missing from an important time, December 14th, when all the unmasking and the whole debate with the Intelligence Committee and President-elect Trump is happening, right up until May 17th, the date Robert Mueller is named special counsel. Come on, to say that's a big coincidence and that all those things happen, that just insults people's intelligence.
Congressman Jordan, one of your colleagues from Connecticut, Jim Symes, referenced Benghazi and your obsession, or when I say your, Republicans' obsession with this supposed animus. Let's listen.
I see this as the latest installment of Benghazi, where, some little thread of a fact is used to create some massive scandal. The famous House memo is just the latest and most dangerous installment of trying to save this president's bacon by damaging and throwing mud on a storied institution, in this case, the FBI and the Department of Justice.
Yeah, Jim Symes. That's the new line, that you guys are just carrying Trump's water, and I guess I am too by extension.
We're trying to get to the truth. You cannot argue with the animus that's displayed in the text messages between Ms. Page and Mr. Strzok. you cannot argue with the fact you have a text message which says, oh, it's a profile and courage for her to say she's dismissing herself, Loretta Lynch dismissing herself from the Clinton investigation and giving that decision to Bob Mueller because she already knows the outcome. She already knows she's not going to be charged. I mean, so you go through all this. You have to get to the bottom of this because it raises so many questions. And now, I mean, I would ask Mr. Himes, I'd say, look, do you think they just 5 months of text messages just disappeared? Do you think it was an accident that backup tapes, 700 backup tapes containing 24,000 emails were just destroyed, even though they were under subpoena at the IRS? I mean, you go down the line and look at all these things, and the American people have said, we've had it. We've had it with this kind of behavior. If Laura Ingraham was under investigation by the FBI, or if Jim Jordan was under investigation by the IRS, and we lost documents that were crucial to the investigation and or under subpoena or preservation order, we would be in huge trouble. But somehow when it's Peter Strzok, Mr. Deputy Head of Counterintelligence at the FBI, oh, it's just a snafu. Give me a break.
What about the text message that Strzok sent? I think it was a text message where he said he wasn't sure that he wanted to go work for Mueller because didn't look like there was any there. What did you make of that?
Yeah, they're having this debate. It's like at midnight. Him and Ms. Page are having the text messages back and forth, and it's basically the context is: do we go on the Mueller team or don't we? And this is literally 1.5 days after Mueller's been named. Do we go on the team or not? And he says there's no there, but ultimately he goes on the team. And I would argue he goes on the team because if you look at one of those other text messages in that same exchange, 12:36 a.m. He says, "I have unfinished business. I unleashed it," bragging about himself. "I unleashed it in the mid-year exam," which was the code name they had for the Clinton investigation. "But now I need to fix it and finish it." And then, of course, a few minutes later at 12:40 a.m., he says, "This is an investigation that may lead to impeachment." So that sort of tells you what he's doing. Never forget, this is the guy who talked about the insurance policy months before that in a text message during the campaign. So insurance policy, now we got to fix it and finish it. Is that what he's referring to, the insurance policy that Donald Trump doesn't actually remain president and that this could lead to impeachment because he ultimately joins the Mueller team?
What's the latest on this memo, the release of the House Intel memo, that I guess there's a process for doing that and you guys are trying to cross all the T's and dot all the I's? What do we know now?
I think it will happen next week. I really do. Chairman Nunes approached me on the floor Monday and says he wants to move forward with this as quick as he can. There's a vote in the House committee, then it's released. The White House has 5 days to give it a thumbs up or thumbs down. I think it'll take 5 seconds for him to give it a thumbs up. But if they do wait the 5 days and they don't disagree with releasing it, then it's released after that 5-day time slot. What I do think is important, Laura, is that when this thing is released, it has it is cited, it is referenced to the underlying material, so that people know the memo and the statements and things alleged in that memo are based on these fundamental sources that are out there. I think that is critical that this thing be properly sourced, properly referenced.
All right, we're talking to Congressman Jim Jordan here on the Laura Ingraham Show. Congressman, thank you so much for your insights on this. We look forward to reading the memo and learning more about this.